Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Carlos Correa. On the program today, Yolanda Silva with the Las Cruces Public Schools. We'll talk to her about Project Link, and we'll find out how the program is helping students juggle school while having proper shelter. But first, on the Pacific coast of Mexico, in 1542, slaves and Spaniards built the San Salvador, then sailed it up to the coast to discover what is now San Diego. Nearly 500 years later, volunteers are rebuilding the galleon, which will become the only age of exploration replica on the west coast of the United States. Fronteras reporter Katie Ufred has more in this report.
This empty parking lot on San Diego Bay has been transformed into a 16th century shipyard, where the San Diego Maritime Museum is resurrecting the San Salvador, the first ship to land on San Diego's shores. But you don't need to wait until construction is complete to sail back in time. Pay $5 at Spanish Landing Park and you can watch firsthand as volunteers and Maritime Museum employees build an historically accurate replica of the Spanish galleon.
It's just it's a huge undertaking just from we're using 10 different woods and then having the right team to be able to shape them and fit all of these pieces, because the ship is literally a basket and they all have to sit and work together and be strong and stout.
Bruce Heyman heads up the project for the Maritime Museum. He says many San Diegans stop by to see what the ruckus is, but leave knowing the history of their city.
I think it will attract people's attention to the history and, our founding. I mean, I've been here for 35 years, but have never really paid attention much to any of that.
In 1542, Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo sailed his flagship into San Diego Bay, becoming the first European to discover what is now San Diego. He claimed it for Spain. Cabrillo was sailing from Mexico looking for a quicker route to the Spice Islands. A special exhibit at the construction site houses replicas of the dwellings and canoes used by the native Kumeyaay Indians Cabrillo met when he landed. So far, 3/4 of the $6.2 million needed for the project has been raised, thanks to private donations and a major grant from the Coastal Conservancy Commission. The San Salvador is being built almost exclusively of wood, the way it was built in the 1500s. The wood is carefully chosen by lead shipwright Frank Townsend, some cuts coming all the way from Africa and South America. Only pieces with no imperfections are used.
We ended up using 6 semi-truckloads. That's about approximately 300,000 pounds of wood. And we probably came out with 10 or 12,000 pounds on the boat. There's a lot of scrap around.
The only, although major, difference in how they're building it today compared to 1542, power tools.
If Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo had an AC outlet, he would have plugged a power tool into it and used it. But we also have much more rigorous standards that we have to achieve now.
That's because once it's finished, the San Salvador will take student groups and paying passengers on historical sailing trips, following the route of Spanish exploration. But the replica will have some modern upgrades. Think toilets, refrigerators, and 2 giant diesel engines. For now, workers painstakingly carve and sand the wood using huge tools like this 7,000-pound ship saw with a 24-foot blade built in 1920. No plans of the original San Salvador exist, so the museum consulted dozens of experts to reach a consensus on the ship's appearance. This idea has been in the works for 20 years, but construction just began in February of last year.
It's really like a time machine in ways. Even though we use power tools, we're using the same technology. And nobody here has built a Spanish galleon. So everybody's relying on each other. And we're figuring things out as we go along. That's like an adventure.
In the end, they settled on a 95-foot-long body with a mast that will rise 100 feet off the deck. Retired plumber Roy Libby is one of the volunteers making it happen.
I'm living my fantasy here. And ever since I read Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, I've wanted to sail away to Treasure Island on a sailboat.
This time lapse shows the construction progress, with a photo taken every day from May 2011 through last week. The goal is to be finished by the end of 2013. That's almost 3 years construction time. It took Cabrillo less than half that time nearly 500 years ago, but he had help that isn't available today.
But he also had a lot more labor. Unfortunately, probably a lot of the 100 people that he had helping to build it, many of them were slaves probably. You know, it was a different time and a different place.
We don't have that many slaves. I think we just passed 60 volunteers.
The great thing about it is that the people here are supplying the expertise and the money to build the ship, and all I have to do is what I'm told and be diligent.
Volunteers, like Libby, make up more than half the workforce. But even with the help, Heyman estimates the ship will take 90,000 hours of work to reach completion.
I'm excited for it to be finished. I want to ride on it, and I don't even mind paying because I want to continue to support the museum. It's a wonderful thing for San Diego.
It's definitely something to look forward to when it's complete. Now, switching gears, my guest today works for the Las Cruces Public Schools. Yolanda Silva, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Some may say that your work is really important. Tell us a little bit about Project Link.
Project Link is the program that is through the Las Cruces Public Schools. It is the program that helps students who are homeless or near homelessness to work through the barriers and make sure that they have every opportunity that they can for their education.
What are some of the challenges you think that these kids face besides the obvious?
Well, besides the obvious, a lot of the things that sometimes they have no place to do homework. A lot of our students love school and they're very studious, but there's no place to do homework because they're either going from house to house, they're living in a shelter that is not based for a family, or they're living in a car, or they're living in a motel and they just don't have the space and the time to be able to do homework.
Describe for me a typical teenager in this program. Describe them to me.
They're very normal. You would never know them differently from any of the other kids. Most of them are very willing to do their education. They're very dedicated because they know that education is going to be the key, or one of the keys, to help them out of the situation that they're in. And then some may wonder, them being part of this program, how do they get into their situation? Well, now with the economic situation that we have in this country, we have a lot of families who were doing very well, but they've lost their job. And now they find themselves in a situation where they've never been before. So we have quite a few families now, and it's growing. We have teenagers who have either been kicked out of their home, have decided that maybe that's not the place they want to be and they want to try being on their own. And then we have some of those who have been in abusive situations and they've been removed from the home, and so, or they've removed themselves, and so they've had to figure out how to do things on their own, and they're homeless. How difficult do you think it is for a teenager to be put in that situation where they have to be an adult while they're still teenagers? I guess it really depends on the teenager themselves. We have most of their teenagers are very, very mature, and they're at the level where they know they need to take care of themselves, and they've already figured out how to do that. Because if they've been in an abusive situation or in a home that's chaotic and not very conducive to their learning and to their home situation, they have learned already how to manipulate and how to work the system or work their situation so that they can provide for themselves. So a lot of them have already kind of figured out, it's like, this is how I know I need to be the one to wake myself up in the morning, go to school, those kinds of things. So they've kind of already set that up for themselves. Not all these kids are bad, correct? Oh, absolutely not. I would say 99% of our kids are not bad. Sometimes it's just the fact that the situation's difficult and they need to figure out how to maneuver themselves through that situation. But most of our kids are very, very dedicated to their education. We have one high school student who's graduating this year from Mayfield High School who has won the Daniels Foundation scholarship. So that's a wonderful opportunity for them because they know that they'll be able to go to college and have everything taken care of for them. And the person has earned it. So, and we had one last year. So they're very dedicated. A lot of our students receive a scholarship or receive some kind of assistance because they have worked hard.
How many students are part of this project?
We have students ranging from Head Start all the way to high school, 12th grade, and we have about 420 right now that are identified. And I think that's the key word we need to look at, is identified, because we know that there are more children out there. It's just that we are not aware of them. And these are just students that we've been able to identify and make sure that we've been able to support, but we know that there's many more.
Can you tell me the definition of Project Link in terms of the type of teenager that signs up or is part of this program?
As long as they don't have a fixed home, a night residence, they're considered homeless. And and like I said a little earlier, a lot of our homeless students are students who couch surf, which means they go from one home to another, stay with a friend here, stay with a friend there. We have some that are part of a group home, and then we have some that are staying in a car. We have some that another family has picked up because they're concerned and they want to help, but they're still considered homeless because it's not really their home.
When people think of people who are homeless, we always have a picture in our heads. How do these kids identify themselves? Are they proud to be part of this program because they're helping?
Our program is called Project Link for a purpose. Most of our students don't like to be identified as homeless because they are just as normal as all the other kids. There is no distinction other than they don't have a fixed place to live or to spend the night. So most of them, that's why, will not label themselves as homeless. So that's why we stick to Project Link, because it's a project that links students to different aspects of the community, of the school community, to make sure that they can be successful. So we don't label them in any way or form.
Paint a picture for me in terms of a typical day for one of these kids involved in the program.
Well, first thing is getting up in the morning and not knowing whether you have a place to shower, a place to change, clean clothes, a place to do your typical hygiene kind of things. And then, do I make it to school? Do I have a bus? Do I have transportation? How do I get to school? Once at school, their day is pretty normal, because that's the safe place. That's a routine. They have classes, they know it's breakfast, classes, lunch, and then the end of the school day. At the end of the school day, it's where am I going? Do I have a place to live? Do I have a place to stay tonight? Do I have a place to shower? All over again.
Is there a concern over administrators in terms of, will this child come back to class because of their situation?
Many times there are, and that's why our program is important, because teachers are very busy with their classes. It's very hard for them they care very much, and they do take care of these children at their schools in a wonderful manner. But they're not able to go make that home visit, to go look for that student, to find out why aren't they in school. So yes, it is, because sometimes it's like, oh, we had to move and now I'm across town, how do I get to school? Or now I don't have any clean clothes, so how am I going to be at school? So a lot of times that's where we come in and we make those connections and try to make sure we service those students so that those barriers aren't in their way of their education.
Being part of this program kind of opens the doors for these kids to be perhaps bullied or picked on. How do you guys prevent that from happening?
Once again, it's meeting with the staff from the school. The school staff is wonderful. They're very good about making sure they keep an eye on the kids. And if there is anything like that happening, right away we all get involved and figure out as a school staff, and if there's a parent involved, how we're going to make sure that doesn't happen.
Tell us about the academic challenges that these teenagers face being part of this program.
Well, one of them is homework. Our education has changed a lot in technology and that kind of thing, and expectations are to write papers on computers and do things like that. So sometimes it's those kinds of things because they don't have that technology with them. So sometimes it's making sure that there's laptops they can have available to them and that kind of thing. But homework is a big one because, again, if I'm having to figure out which friend I'm going to stay with tonight, and I can only come in at 8 o'clock when it's bedtime, when do I do my homework? In my backpack, what do I carry? Do I carry school supplies or do I carry my clothes and my hygiene stuff? So those are our barriers that they have, and so I know that sometimes homework is a really big challenge because they're not quite sure, if they're going to have that opportunity to do their homework that night. We have some really good staff that's willing to work with them, and during the, come in the morning early, you can stay in at lunchtime, you can, so they give them extra time. But again, that's if we know that the student is homeless, and we can help really, come over those barriers.
Many teenagers face a lot of issues, including drugs and alcohol. Do these particular teenagers involved with the program, are they more at risk to be influenced by that?
They are, only because of their situation and the fact that there's a lot of things on their shoulders, and they're not sure what tomorrow's going to bring. The good thing that if we identify them, then they have all the support, not only the support from our program, but the support from the school themselves. And so it's a good way for us to help keep an eye on them, talk with them, visit with them. They have the opportunity to come and visit with us, and be able to talk with us about anything and those kinds of things. And really, I think that there's a very small percentage, if any, of our homeless identified kids that are on any kind of drug or alcohol kind of issue. I don't see that happening. Most of our kids are pretty good about, I just want to go to school and I want to learn and I want to be able to get to work so that I'm not in the situation I'm in.
How long have you been part of the program?
I've been part of the program for about 5 years. I've worked, the program has been in existence for at least 15, 18 years. And I worked with the program before, and then about 4 or 5 years ago, I actually became part of the team that works with the homeless students.
Has the situation worsened since the economic downfall?
Yes, because now it's families that we see. It's not just teenage kids. We're seeing kids under the age of 8, lots of them being homeless because of the situation. The parents were working really well, they had a good job, they were doing well, and now factories and laboratories, universities have downsized, and so they've lost their job, and now we see a lot of kids that we would have never thought to see before.
How does a child focus on their education, on math, on science homework when they're dealing with where am I going to live?
That's a really good question, and that's a really hard thing depending on the student and depending on their home environment. We have some we have families who are very, very strong, and then we do have those that are really struggling. And so one of the things is to find them as many resources as possible so the parent can focus on what they need to focus to try to get their feet back on the ground, and then students can focus on their education. So it's finding resources. Resources in Las Cruces are very, very, very slim. We don't have a whole lot out there, so sometimes you have to be creative.
Obviously, homelessness impacts everyone. Is there a certain demographic that you work on with? Is there more than the other?
Well, this is a Hispanic town to a certain extent, and so a lot of our families are, but they're from every walks of life and every color, race. They're all of them. There really isn't a distinction. It's everybody. Everybody gets impacted.
So being part of this program, do they have to come like after school, or you're there just to support?
We're there from the moment school opens till the moment school closes, and then afterwards if we need to be. Our job is to provide support as much as we can. We've done tutoring programs after school. We're looking to hopefully next year have a computer lab that we can a mobile one, that we can kind of move around from school to school so students can kind of come to that's closer to their home or wherever they're staying, so that they can take advantage of that technology. So we are willing to work with the student wherever and whatever time we need to.
Does your program have an office, or do the kids kind of know where to look for you guys or where to find you?
Most of the kids are usually identified by somebody from the school because they've come to a counselor, they've come to a nurse, or when they're registering, they actually don't have any kind of proof of residence or anything like that. So most of the referrals do come from school staff. And then we do have an office that's located at 821 South Almendra, and our phone number is 575-527-5913. And we also have a website that's on the Las Cruces Public Schools. So it's lcps.k12.nm.us, and they can look under Project Link.
How difficult is it for a teenager to admit that they are homeless, that they are having a problem?
Very difficult. Usually when we meet a student, we try not to use the word homeless. We talk about their situation, what are their needs. We're there to help them in whatever we can, depending on what they're needing, and if not, where can we direct them to. So we try not to use the word homeless if we don't have to.
Why do you think that word is so negative when people use it or they hear it?
Because of that image that brings up the typical homeless person. It's not a family, it's not kids. It's usually a gentleman that's on the corner or that kind of a thing. So it's because of the image. And so we try not to, that image hasn't changed even though we have a tremendous homeless population of families and students in the United States. That image still hasn't changed.
In terms of after school, where do these kids go? Is there a shelter or?
There really isn't a shelter or anything available other if they're staying at La Casa or if they're actually staying at one of the group homes in town. But some of the schools do have after-school programs, and we try to find scholarships or private donors that will help us pay for those scholarships for them to be able to attend after-school programs. And if not, a lot of them end up at a friend's house. They ended up at the library. They end up at the park, kind of thing.
It must be difficult for these teenagers to focus on their education when dealing with the situation. But you have a lot of success stories that come out of the program.
We do. Like I said, we have about 10 seniors who are graduating this year, which is a wonderful thing. And they're almost all of them they have wonderful grades, they're very dedicated, and their goal is to go to college. So we do have success stories. We have success stories of families who, just with that little bit of help and support that we've been able to give them, they're on their feet in a couple of weeks or a month or whatever the case may be. So we do have those success stories, and it's a wonderful feeling when you see those students say, "I'm doing well," and the family actually sit there and say, "We're okay." We're doing good.
Do the majority of the teenagers that are part of this program, when they first enter, are they thinking about college?
Most of them are. Believe it or not, most of them are. Because it's something that's ingrained in the sense of our education, with our schools and everything. College is our goal. We want all our kids to graduate and go into college. So it's something that teachers talk from kindergarten on, Head Start on. So, it's something that's already part. And sometimes they feel like I may not be able to. So it's just getting them to see, oh, yes, you can. Look, there's this program, that program, there's this assistance, there's this scholarship. We just need to get you hooked up with the right resources.
And speaking of scholarships, you've also had students in your program that have earned scholarships to go to college.
Yes, we had the Daniels Foundation, again, is one of the biggest scholarships there is, because it's a scholarship where you have to compete, and you compete with other students around the nation. And so last year we had a gentleman win, and this year we have another one that's won the scholarship.
In terms of with your staff, it's a small staff, correct?
Yes, it is a small staff.
How do you keep in contact with these students once they leave the program, once they graduate? Do you?
Well, we kind of do, because we've made that connection. So a lot of them are really good about letting us know how they're doing, and letting us know that they're almost done with college, or I'm in and I'm doing well. And so that's what we like to hear.
Does it surprise you that there's a large number of students who take part in this program or who need this program?
It's surprising every year, only because since I started, I've seen the numbers grow and grow. And again, it's not just our teenagers that are growing, but it's also families. When you have little ones, when you have a mom and even a mom and dad, two-parent home with 3 little ones, and they're homeless all of a sudden.
It must be difficult for the staff who build this strong relationship, this friendship with these students, and when they leave the program.
We cry. We cry, but we also celebrate, because we see them going on to better things. And that's the key. That's what we want to see. We want to see them to be successful, whether it's college or the military, or I found a job. We want them to be successful. That's what we want to see.
And do they come back and kind of motivate the other students, new students?
We usually, if a student's doing real well, and again, depending on whether they're comfortable in telling their story and being able to express how they felt and how they got through the situation, we do ask them to come and give talks to our other students, and motivate them and help them see that it is possible.
Obviously, the staff have a big role in terms of helping the program run. What type of help do you get from the community?
We have wonderful community partners. We have community partners from car clubs, community partners from churches, from the Home Builders Association. We have wonderful partnerships, and we call, and if they can, they help without asking any questions. They're there.
And you mentioned the 400 so far, students?
About 420. And again, as I said, the key word is identified.
And they're from all over the...
All over the district. Our program is district-wide, so we work from south to north, from east to west.
Do you see more high school students rather than like grade school students? Or?
I've seen, this year, we've seen more elementary students on the rise. High school students are still always, they're always an increase in our high school students. But we have seen a rise in families with kids in elementary and in middle school.
Okay. If families are watching out there, or they think they may be at risk, or they want more information, who do they contact? Where do they go for this?
They can call my office, Yoli Silva. I am a social worker with the Las Cruces Public Schools Project Link program, and my office number is 575-527-5913. Or they can look on our website, which has some other resources that can link them up to things, resources in the community or resources in the nation for more information. And that's under the Las Cruces Public Schools website under Project Link.
And do you ever have students that stay in this community or are forced to leave because of their situation? Or?
Absolutely, because sometimes depending if a family is in a homeless situation because of domestic violence or anything like that, sometimes they have to move out of the community for their safety. And then sometimes it's just, my dad was finally able to get a job, but it's in Oklahoma.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Yoli, thank you so much for being with us today. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
All right. And that's all the time we have. Thanks for watching. Remember, you can see this entire interview online at krwg.org. And while you're there, visit our blog, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. I'm Carlos Correa. We'll see you next time.